Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the incredibly high-stakes, cinematic reality behind the modern internet. You know, Amazon, Netflix, Google, Uber. These massive platforms are handling millions of users and processing just mind-boggling amounts of data every single second. But behind those seamless, perfect user experiences, the infrastructure powering them is actually a constant, chaotic war zone of hardware and software failures.
So picture this for a second. A major streaming platform is hitting peak traffic during a highly anticipated premiere. And then, suddenly, servers just start crashing. Internal dashboards instantly turn this angry, flashing red. Traffic spikes wildly, request queues are overflowing, and users are just stuck staring at the dreaded buffering screen. So what actually happens when millions of people depend on a system and the physical machines running it just die? I mean, how do these tech giants survive this scenario literally every single day?
Well, the answer really starts with this one fundamental industry mantra. Everything fails all the time. In the world of distributed systems, engineers don't just, cross their fingers and hope for the best. They assume that failures are actively happening at any given moment. You just can't build a globally scaled platform assuming your hardware is going to be perfect. The absolute golden rule of system design here is that these systems must be explicitly designed to survive those failures, gracefully.
Section 1. The inevitability of failure. When we say everything fails, we really aren't exaggerating. I mean, think about it. Servers crash because of memory leaks, network cables literally get cut, databases lock up completely, entire cloud regions go dark because of a power or cooling outage, services get totally overloaded by sudden traffic spikes, hardware just organically breaks down over time, and hidden software bugs, they pop up out of nowhere. At massive scale, these things aren't rare once-in-a-decade anomalies. For a tech giant, this is literally just a Tuesday afternoon.
Section 2. Fault tolerance versus resiliency.
Now, people actually mix up these two critical terms all the time. Fault tolerance is all about surviving. Let's say a Netflix server crashes right in the middle of you streaming a movie. A fault-tolerant system will instantly redirect your video traffic to a healthy server, and your movie never even pauses. You notice absolutely nothing. Resiliency, on the other hand, that's about recovering. It's the system's ability to quickly boot up a brand new server behind the scenes to replace the dead one, getting total capacity right back to normal.
Section 3. Layer 1. Structural defenses.
Okay, so our primary structural defense here is the power of redundancy. In a distributed system, we literally never have just one of anything critical. We're talking multiple application servers, replicated databases, backup network paths, and completely duplicate storage systems spread all across different availability zones and geographic regions. If a server that's processing your credit card suddenly bursts into flames, which, hey, happens, a load balancer instantly spots the drop and routes your request to a duplicate server. The system survives purely because of structural duplication.
Now, redundancy for computing power is relatively easy, but redundancy for data, that's a whole lot harder. And that brings us to replication. We basically keep a primary database for writing data alongside multiple replica databases that are constantly copying that data. So if the primary goes down, boom, one of the replicas automatically promotes itself to become the new primary. This massively improves availability and durability. But I should mention, it does introduce some pretty complex challenges like managing data synchronization, ensuring consistency, and dealing with replication lag. That's that tiny delay before the backup copy perfectly matches the main one.
Section 4. Layer 2. Active defense mechanisms.
Moving on to active defense, the absolute foundation here is knowing exactly what's broken, and we do that through health checks. Systems like Kubernetes use things called readiness and liveness probes to continuously ping servers, basically constantly asking, hey, are you alive? Are you healthy? If a server doesn't answer, load balancers will instantly stop sending it traffic. They isolate the failure, kind of like medical triage, and then usually they'll automatically launch fresh replacements right on the spot.
But wait, what if a service isn't actually dead, but just agonizingly slow? That is incredibly dangerous because it causes incoming requests to pile up and completely exhaust the system's resources. Enter the circuit breaker pattern. You'll see this popularized by libraries like Hystrix or Resilience4j. It works just like the electrical panel in your house. If a service fails repeatedly, the circuit breaker opens, instantly blocking all traffic so that struggling service can finally catch its breath. After a bit of time passes, it goes half open, letting just a tiny trickle of test requests through.
If those succeed, it snaps closed again and normal traffic resumes. It is a brilliant way to prevent a cascading system collapse.
A lot of times, a failure is just a tiny, temporary network blip. So systems are designed to automatically retry failed requests. But here's the catch. Retrying blindly is super dangerous. If 10,000 users hit retry at the exact same millisecond, they will absolutely crush the server in what we call a retry storm. To prevent this, we use exponential backoff, which means waiting progressively longer between each try, and something called jitter. Jitter injects just a tiny little bit of random time delay to stagger those retries, basically saving the server from a massive synchronized bombardment.
And alongside those smart retries, we absolutely 100% must have timeouts. Imagine you ask a database for some information and it just hangs. Your server is going to sit there waiting forever. Multiply that by thousands of requests, and suddenly your server's entire thread pool is blocked. The whole application freezes. So timeouts enforce a strict rule of failing fast. If a service doesn't respond in, let's say, 2 seconds, the system literally cuts the cord, returns an error, and frees up those critical resources immediately.
Let's look at another fascinating architectural pattern: bulkheads. So, in a physical ship, bulkheads divide the hull into these watertight compartments. If the hull breaches, only one compartment floods and the ship stays afloat, right? Well, in software, we do the exact same thing, by separating different system components into isolated resource pools. If the recommendation algorithm suddenly starts eating up massive amounts of memory and crashes, it gets trapped in its own bulkhead. Meanwhile, your payment processing service, which is running in a totally separate resource pool, remains perfectly unaffected.
Sometimes, though, despite all these incredible defenses, the traffic is just too massive. And that's where we bring in load shedding as our last resort survival tactic. During extreme overload, the system will intentionally drop non-critical requests just to protect the core functionality. For example, an e-commerce site getting crushed by traffic might temporarily disable product recommendations, delay some background analytics, or even lower image quality. The site might look a little bare bones for a minute, but the checkout button stays online. And really, at the end of the day, that's what actually matters.
Section 5, Layer 3, the offensive approach and worst-case scenarios.
Here's a wild thought. To prove your system is actually resilient, you kind of have to break it on purpose. Welcome to the fascinating world of chaos engineering. Companies like Netflix famously created something called Chaos Monkey, which, yes, sounds like a terrible day at the zoo, but it's actually a program that literally roams through their live production environments. It randomly unplugs servers, terminates instances, injects network latency, all to discover hidden weaknesses and validate their automated recovery systems before a real, uncontrolled outage can take them by surprise.
But, chaos engineering mostly tests localized, smaller failures. What happens if a meteor hits a data center or an entire geographic cloud region just goes offline? That requires hardcore disaster recovery planning. We're talking about maintaining entirely separate backup regions, continuously running cross-region data replication, relying on automated global traffic failovers, and rigorously testing data recovery procedures over and over again.
When a massive disaster strikes, success is measured by 2 vital metrics. First, we have RTO, or Recovery Time Objective. This is essentially the stopwatch. It defines exactly how quickly the system must be back online. Second is RPO, or Recovery Point Objective. This defines how much data loss the business can legally and financially tolerate when restoring from backups. To put that in perspective, a modern banking system is going to have an RPO of basically 0. They literally cannot afford to lose a single transaction.
Section 6, Surviving Global Scale. The simple truth is, you can't fix what you can't see. Observability is basically the nervous system of resiliency. Engineers use heavy-duty monitoring tools like Prometheus, Grafana, Datadog, the ELK stack, OpenTelemetry to continuously track literally every metric imaginable. They're watching latency graphs, CPU spikes, error rates, and retry counts in real time. These glowing dashboards are exactly what tell the automated systems and the human engineers when to trigger a circuit breaker, scale up redundancy, or initiate a massive disaster failover.
All right, let's do a rapid-fire recap of this entire resiliency arsenal we've just explored. We started with our core goals, fault tolerance and resiliency. Then we built out structural redundancy. We added our active defenses, like circuit breakers and smart retries. We tested them offensively using chaos engineering, and we backed the whole thing up with comprehensive disaster recovery. The huge takeaway here: reliable systems are not built by magically avoiding failures. They are built by engineering elegant, brilliant ways to survive them.
Which brings us to the ultimate challenge.
Whether you're studying for a system design interview, working right now as a DevOps engineer, or aiming for a role at a major tech company, the reality of everything failing all the time is your playground. We've shown you the tools, the architectural patterns, and the exact mindset required to keep the digital world spinning when the servers start burning. So taking everything you've just learned from this explainer, how would you build a system that survives failures at a global scale?